All right, well then I guess we'll get started. Can you all hear me? All right, great. Hey, thank you so much for coming down to this tech chat. I'm Kat Lenhart, VP of Sales with AnyClip, and I'm joined by Charlie Weiss, SVP of Business Development and Marketing at NATPE. So with that said, today we're talking about unlocking the archives of content that you have with AI. We're all using video today. That video can be our video on Zoom. It can be our marketing video that we post on YouTube or on our owned and operated site. We're just flooded with it, but we're not managing it properly. And so we work together, Charlie's organization, NATPE, and our organization, AnyClip, to unlock 60 years of NATPE's archives to make a searchable, actionable content experience for their members. So, yeah.
Quite the setup.
So, Charlie, can you tell us a little bit about like NATPE and just give us a sense of that kind of content?
Absolutely. Thanks. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. So, yes, I run events for NATPE. NATPE is the industry's content association for all things content related, which is buyers, distribution, producers, and everyone in between. We're represented by about 81 countries as per our last global market, and we're typically known for producing markets and conferences. The most well known is every January, typically in the southeast of the U.S. The last 15 years or so has been Miami. Also internationally, the last 10 years or so has been in Budapest, and we have a number of other events, conferences, summits, award shows, including our 4th annual Streaming Plus Summit, which was just this about 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles. So that's our short story.
Yeah, Charlie produces tremendous events with some really A-list stars, and the organization has been doing it for many, many decades. But they're sitting on all of this mountain of content, just like we find that we're doing ourselves in our businesses. We understand that we've shot a ton of content, but what are we actually doing with it? Does it just go off to a MAM somewhere and get lost? Do we actually understand what we have? And so where AnyClip comes into the picture is we have an AI-driven asset management platform in which you ingest your content, and then we automatically tag that content frame by frame with AI. We're using natural language processing, speech-to-text, optical character recognition, and more to understand everything seen, shown, and heard within that piece of content, and then activate it. And when we say activate it, you can do everything from enable shoppable video, tying it to something you might see on screen, or you can search it. In-video search is arguably a game changer when it comes to these types of video archives, no matter what the content, no matter what the industry. And so for NATPE, we actually put together what we call our watch page experience. And you can see, as we kind of scroll down here, it's very similar in UI. All the CSS is customizable, but you can kind of see we're getting that streaming experience on the owned and operated platform, and all of this is automated. You can actually search within the video content itself. For example, if we have the Brandon Tartikoff Awards, which are a phenomenal event that NATPE produces, we understand that Maury Povich is in there. Think of everything that would be lost if we weren't able to understand what's in our content and preserve it. For example, here with this Maury, we're able to see not only people by facial recognition, but if, for example, we search for a particular brand. Like, for example, if we're talking about content where a Nike, swoosh comes up or anything like that, we can get to that level and understand what's in the content. We can also look at the transcript itself, offer translations, all of those types of things that enrich the content and make it actionable. So Charlie, so this enables a lot for your membership.
Yeah, well, like I said, we're a member-driven association globally, and there's a few things that were happening with us. Most of it is exactly what you would expect, right? We're walking in the door. We're inheriting about a half century of content, video content, from conferences and panels and keynotes and every show launch that's ever been done at a NATPE event, for almost 60 years. But the problem is that here we are. Maybe it's cataloged, maybe it's labeled well. It's in different locations. It's on different platforms. There's really no taxonomy to it. There's really no type of classification system. There's certainly no visibility. And then the biggest problem is there's absolutely no searchability. So why does that come into play? For one thing, because like the rest of entertainment and media, we're dealing with a natural progression of resource optimization. Right? Which just means that everybody who was wearing 3 hats is now wearing 5, and any team that was 10 members is now half that. So there's a manpower issue, but more importantly, is that why would we need that content? It's something that we feel very strongly about making available to our members globally, making available historically. When you think about the level of executive that we've represented over the decades, when you think about the level of talent that we've been able to represent over the decades, it's incredibly crucial content, and we want to make it available not just for marketing, not just for distribution, but in a best case scenario, we'd like to monetize and possibly even license it. And there's no way to do that until we could apply some kind of a science to it, because the way it was useless. It was more or less like having a stack of, VHS tapes sitting in an attic, that was used to retape Johnny Carson every night. Like there was no viability to it. So that's when we came to AnyClip.
Yeah, I really like that you bring up the monetization aspect and everything else that you're driving from this. For example, we spoke with a major broadcaster who they're trying to, manage the mountains and mountains of content that they're producing every day. And I mean, they've got folks, out in the middle of the country that, 20-year-olds in college that are sitting there manually going through these things and getting very scant level metadata about this. When you're automating, these simple workflows in an environment where, we are heading probably towards a recessive environment where you really need to look at how are people allocated to projects? How can we make this more efficient? And then also, how can we continue to drive revenue? We actually work a lot in the publishing segment as well, and we're driving smarter ads because when you understand what's in your content, you can put ads against it that make sense. If we're seeing the Nike swoosh, we're putting maybe an ad that is Nike next to it, so there's the exposure, or we're putting Adidas next to it because Adidas wants equal brand exposure. And so there's a ton that's available there. In the case of that editing process and whatnot, even folks who are looking at creating ancillary content, say if NATPE is producing it's the end of the year and it's the top 10 takeaways from NATPE events in 2022. It's an easy search because oh yeah, that's right, Maury said this one thing, or Tamron Hall said this at the Iris Awards. There's all of these things that you can pull so easily, clip them out, and create this ancillary content very effectively. There's a ton that you can do.
It brings up one anecdote. The system had just been put into place and rolled out, and it couldn't have been more than a handful of weeks later where we fielded a request from a production company that had launched a show at a NATPE market, I guess probably mid to late 90s. I think it was one of those American Gladiator ones, something along those lines. And they were desperate to index and grab a piece to this presentation that had happened. And I don't know how that would have been, searched, but the whole searchability quotient to me was the game changer. I didn't realize, the technology that had been applied to this, and I found it such an intuitive system. So we were able to provide that for our members. That kind of access is invaluable. And then beyond that, Kat brought up our Brandon Tartikoff Legacy Awards. Just this past June in Beverly Hills, we had the privilege of producing what's now the 18th annual. And we're talking about an evening where we had Maury Povich's, reference. He's coming off of the apex of a 33-year exit from syndication. He's being presented to by Connie Chung, who brought the house down, by the way. And in addition to this, during this fairly short evening, we've got Perlina Bakwe, who's the chairman of Universal, NBC Universal, presenting to Amy Poehler on site at this awards event. We've got Kaylee Cuoco presenting to Channing Dungey, who's the chairman of Warner Brothers. I mean, it was a whole evening of this, including Henry Winkler presenting to William Shatner, who's walking on to our podium at age 91. There's a real danger in us losing this type of video archives if we hadn't been able to, I mean, Kat can speak to this more eloquently and fluently, but if we hadn't been able to digitize this in a consistent manner that was accessible and searchable and retrievable, and we didn't have that, and I don't know the amount of man hours that went into it. I know that it's something that we couldn't have done on our own.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. So, you know, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, if it's the A-lister in the entertainment industry or the A-lister in your company. It's really important to have a record of these things and be able to activate those archives efficiently. I know we've got some folks from the AnyClip team here if you want to give a wave. You should really talk to us if that's something that's of interest. We're at 1628. We also are the 2022 NAB Show Product of the Year this year. We're really proud of this. We were named Best in Show in Las Vegas, and so absolutely would love to meet with folks for that. In terms of the applicability, though, I mean, the industry is just consolidating, so this is even more important now, is it not?
Yeah, I had mentioned, you know, the obvious point about resource optimization.
Yeah.
There is the consolidation that is inherent, and it's, you know, as parts of the industry expand, as in streaming, as we've all seen, there is an inherent organic evolution as content becomes proliferated, right? And so with that comes an obvious contraction of other sides to the industry, and maybe that's perceived as linear or anything else, but it simply means that we're all witness to acquisition, right? So in other words, a Warner Brothers and Discovery and Scripps, HBO and Turner under one roof, Viacom, CBS, Paramount, Pluto under one roof. These are natural progressions and evolutions to the industry, but as those organizations go through their evolutions and machinations, so too are we representing the content buyers and distributors and producers. We feel very responsible. There's a weight there for us to be able to be of service and to be able to you know, make all of this history available to them. And this is part of the technology that we need to be able to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've got the consolidation of industries, but we also have on top of that just making just a ton of content. I'm sure you're making a ton of content every day, whether it's, you know, a meeting that you're recording on Zoom, or you're, you know, just creating things in your marketing pieces that are going up on an owned and operated platform. There's just so much you can do with it. There's such a need for it. One thing that's really interesting, and you talked about the monetization piece that I'd love to bring up, I think we have an extra minute, is brand safety. Brand safety is so important because we just don't have the time to go through our content and understand, is this safe for me to advertise against or not? And if you as a platform can say, yes, this is safe because we have models in place to detect things like alcohol or drugs, or even things that are a little more difficult to understand, like violence, what constitutes violence, and understanding automatically, okay, I've got 2 videos of 4 guys with knives in this. One is a cooking demonstration and one is a knife fight. What's safe to advertise against? These are all things that you can do with a platform-based approach. You've got a lot of players in the AI segment, but with a platform-based approach, you can start to see this and activate that media internally to the platform, make it safe, get it monetizable, and add to that. Now, NATPE, from a monetization standpoint, you're looking at, you know, brand awareness for your sponsors. You're looking at, you know, at the archive piece of it. But for publishers and for other video companies, you know, that's a huge piece.
Well, and you know, associations are born from traditional trade media networks and trade publishers, and that's where we, you know, our deep history comes from. And yeah, the monetization piece is very important. Again, in a best case scenario, we're making this available to our members. We're making it available to our marketing partners for distribution, you know, and really for posterity. And in the best case scenario, yes, we're going to be able to monetize and license this content because it's valuable to them and to us.
Yeah, yeah. Content's tremendously important. We're obviously making a ton of it, and so it needs to be managed more properly. I'm so grateful, Charlie, that you were able to join us to speak to a little bit of how we're working together to do that for NATPE. And I look forward to many more years of working together to bring all the great events and all of the great speakers that you bring to your members.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks,
Cheers.
everybody.